Gayatri Mahamantra with your back straight. Om Bhurabhuvah Swaha Tatsaviturvarenyam Bhargo Devasya Dhimahi Dhiyo Yona Prachodayat. Invocation of the Divine Master Adi Guru Muni Vedvyas. Guru Brahma Guru Vishnu Guru Deva Maheshwara Gurudeva Sakshat Parabrahma Tasmai Shri Guruve Namah Akhand Mandalakaram Vyaptam Yena Characharam Tadpadam Darshitam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namah Om Shri Guruve Namah Vyasarupena Avahayami Sthapyami Dhyayami Pujyami Tato Namaskaram Karomi. Shrimed Bhagavad Gita, chapter number 9, verse number 18. Before I embark upon the exactness of this verse, let us understand something which shall facilitate to develop our understanding thereupon. At many places we find, and we shall further unravel, that there is a mention by the divine intuit Keshava, scripted through Vyasa and brought before us for the times of this day by Adiguru Shankaracharya. There are mentions in Bhagavad Gita where the Lord emphasizes its own self as in the form of all aspects, situations, items, and even nature to a great extent, where it holds itself that it is it. I am the Gayatri, I am the Ganges, I am the Himalayas, I am it, etc. It goes on. It goes on to mention itself as something which is the epitome for anything and everything. That's why I made a mention of items, etc. Now, coming down to this aspect, at times people who are not much connected with the understanding of Bhagavad Gita misconstrue this indication as something in a form of egocentricity by Keshava. Is Krishna trying to be egocentric, overemphasizing itself in the form of anything which is held as epitome in any of the dimension? Is it something like that? Yes, apparently it may seem to be so, but it is not at all so. Why it is not so? See, when you start unraveling the exactness of the truth, what is the truth? The ultimate truth is consciousness. And how do we unravel that? By peeling off. Peeling off what? Peeling off eternity from the transient aspects. Anything which is transient, which is not going to stay forever, has to be discerned and brushed aside. And then try to locate what is going to fall under the ambit of eternity. My physical dimension, it is going to undergo its own witherness. With the passage of time, this mortal plane and with this mortal dimension has to be left. Okay, what else can be transient? Thoughts, imagination, past recollections, propensities, etc. All these are transient in nature. They cannot fall in the ambit of eternity. So what falls in the ambit of eternity? Consciousness alone. Consciousness alone falls in the ambit of eternity. It is something which is immutable and it is immortal. Rest all under the confinements of mortality. So that ability to discern between mortal and immortal is the understanding of transientness and eternity. So when it comes to eternity, Keshava emphasizes itself as everything as an epitome, appearing to be egocentric. But no, it's not so. For example, if I ask you to unravel within your own self, What is something which is mortal and what is immortal in you? You go on questioning yourself by the same sequence as I deliberated upon a while ago. You'll say to yourself, yes, I admit, acknowledge, my physical dimension is not going to stay forever. This is mortal. My thoughts, my imagination, my past recollections, my propensities, all are transient in nature. Then what is going to stay forever? What falls into eternity? And then you confine to one single word, one single letter, that is I. What is this I? Who am I? What am I? Is this not the only question? This is the only valid question for any human who has manifested in the form of a human on this mortal plane. Who am I? What am I? And that I remains. After peeling off everything which is transient in nature, you are left with only one question to probe further. And what is that? What am I? What is this isness? I want to understand what is this isness. What am I? So I alone remains. When you go on probing further with your own evolution, which is in proportion to the purity at mind, heart, intellect, you further understand that this I is not something which is an individual confinement, but this I has to melt and become more pervasive. That I becomes pervasive. Pervasive? Yes. Initially, a seeker will be able to experience a very transient experience which will not last for much, not last longer. But yes, you do experience a pervasiveness. You try to pervade anything and everything around you. So much so that people whom you are very close with, associated closely with, you also at times undergo a pervasiveness into them. You start understanding them more. You start accommodating them more. Not that you agree. You acknowledge whatever they believe or whatever they mention or whatever they discern. But on the ground which is at a larger dimension of existence, you say, there is no difference between me and them. Yes, this is transient in nature. This does not stay initially because we do not hold that kind of purity within at present that we can hold on to that experience and give it a more expansive outward reach. Our reach is confined and transient in nature. But yes, this probe of what am I and who am I ultimately evaporates this I, and evaporation of this I, like the water evaporates, it flies into the thin air and becomes the air itself. Likewise, this understanding and confinement of I, when it evaporates, it becomes everything in the surrounds. A part of the nature, part of other beings, part of other humans, part of any situation, you become it. Yes, initially it comes to an experience as a fancy feeling with a lot of skepticism wrapped up around it, as something like maybe it's a hallucination, maybe it's a misbelief. What is it? You undergo lot many eccentric sways of moods and experiences before you ultimately conclude that no, it is not something which is coming to me unmindfully. With the most rational and balanced state of mind, in a most healthy state, I'm experiencing something which comes to me in a transient manner, but takes me beyond my individual confinement, making me pervade all over around me. I acquire a state of pervasiveness. What I mention here for people like you and me is transient and confined. But for those who are exalted ones, the Siddhas, for them it is neither confined and nor transient. It's for them there to stay forever. And that is their state when they become Videhi. People who are in the physical dimension and yet not confined to the physical dimension, they have already emancipated. They have experienced the touch of emancipation. Not only experienced, but now they are it. They are now emancipated ones. So when the emancipated ones try to observe themselves into their surrounds, they experience only dissolution, absolute dissolution. Like a small idol made out of salt, when it shall submerge into an ocean, what will be left? An ocean. Where is that idol of salt? It has undergone submergence, dissolution. Then the same happens with that confined I or the isness that holds on to a particular name, a particular form, a particular kind of a recognition, and a status or an eligibility behind it. When it goes on to submerge into the ocean of eternity and enters into the pervasiveness, then it becomes one. You may ask, is it your experience? No, it is not at all my own experience. But I am recalling the experience of the great masters, the exalted ones. Experience of me as an individual and likewise for many, many of other people is there of pervasiveness, but in a very transient manner. It comes and it leaves instantly, or maybe for a few minutes. But for the Siddhas, the exalted one, it comes to stay forever. They become it. When they become it, Aham Brahmasmi, then they find anything and everything as themselves, as itself. For them, the Ganges, for them, Rudraksh, for them, Gayatri, for them, Himalayas, for them, the Creator, where all involution has to undergo, where from everything has to originate and culminate into, then they are it. They are no different from Keshava. They are the Keshav then. They are the Keshav. And when they become the Keshav, they also hold the right and the might to express in this form that yes, I am it. I am that. It's me, myself. And then it's not a mention of egocentricity, but it's an expression of what is ongoing within them because they are it. As I also deliberated a couple of classes before, that how do we further our worship of our deity? In fact, the truth remains that we have the Nirguna Brahma, the unmanifest without any form. And then we give it a form in the form of an idol. Are we doing some injustice? No injustice being done. Why? Because initially, we, the confined ones into the ambit of our sensorial drivers, are not able to comprehend something which is eternity, something unmanifest. We cannot connect with something which is abstract by merely definitions. We need something tangible to associate and to hinge upon. And there comes the mention of an idol. We get a form like a human before us to which we can see and connect. With all exactness, we connect with it. Yes, we connect with an objective, either to shun certain amount of fears in our life or to cherish certain cravings into ourselves in the form of seeking desires. And then we say, yes, it is my idol. I pray it as my Ishtadeva. That is my Lord. And then gradually when we evolve more, we say, my Lord, my deity is not confined to this idol made out of clay or stone, or it's a picture. No, now it resides deep into the cavity of my heart. It's there into me now, into my heart. Whenever I close my eyes, I find my deity over here in my heart. Then a seeker shall evolve further and then start believing in the form of a graduation to a higher understanding, where is my deity? Where is the existence of my deity? Then it would say, it is everywhere. It's everywhere into entirety. It pervades everything, where it's omnipresent. My deity is not confined to an idol. My deity is not confined to merely the cavity of my heart, but my deity is all over. It's all pervasive, omnipresent. And if my deity is omnipresent, then obviously I have to break the confinements of a limited form. Yes, this journey takes a while before one can cover the distance to comprehend and transform the deity in form to deity that is omnipresent. This journey on goes within the seeker itself. And when this journey is accomplished from the idol into the omnipresence of the deity, then one is easily able to connect with the unmanifest without form. But the journey goes on. And when it is able to connect with its deity in its omnipresent form, then the passage that becomes the path breaker for the seeker to know by in its own respective capacity, individual capacity, also become all pervasive. That does not happen in one life. Yes, an initiation has to be made by merely an observation of a thought in the form of a dharana, in the form of a contemplation. Yes, it may appear to be an act of fallacy initially. Yes, but this act of imagination ultimately transforms into the realism where you become it, the all pervasive. The intellect travels along with while understanding scriptures, and it certainly projects the kind of its own doubts and skepticism upon anything which is given to it. And that's something which is reasonable. The intellect is made for that. Its origin owes to the fact that it has to pop one or the other kind of a logic and try to seek its ramification and clarification as well. So thereby, this particular verse also holds the same background, and this my mentioning beforehand will now facilitate you to comprehend and connect in the right manner and not confine this mentioning as something as a pronouncement of an egocentricity. Let's come down to the verse under our study. Here it comes before you. गति भरता प्रभु साक्षी निवास शरणम सुहृत प्रभव प्रलय स्थानम निधानम बीजम अव्ययम. I am the culmination of all acts. Though the word I am is not mentioned here, but this is an inherent understanding embedded into it. I am the culmination of all acts, the sustainer, the Lord, the witness, the abode, the refuge, the one always working for your benefit, the source of origin and end, in which all retain their state, in whom everything finally dissolves, the cause imperishable. That I-ness is there everywhere. That I-ness is there everywhere. But since now you understand what is this I, it's not an I as a declaration or a mandate by any individual, but it's an utterance which obviously becomes when you become it, when the I submerges into the ocean and undergoes total dissolution, then you say, I am the ocean. I envelop everything. I encase entirety. When you envelop and encase entirety, you become the source of creation at the end. Then you observe it as the rightful I and not the egocentric individual confinement. And that must be rightfully understood by the seeker. Having said that, I would take a deliverable, straight deliverable from this particular verse. It strengthens the belief of an individual into the unmanifest dimension of a seeker especially. For a seeker, it strengthens the belief in the form of an individual who is now in the laboratory of consciousness, trying to seek and understand and unravel more about awareness, where it wants to know if at all pervasiveness comes to the broader understanding of a human within this mortal plane, then how can that be experienced? It can be experienced through knowledge accompanied by austerity. Knowledge and austerity purify the intellect to such an extent that it becomes potent enough to encompass the broad understanding about all pervasiveness. With a confined ego, one cannot ever dare to comprehend the aspects of all pervasiveness. You need a pure intellect, a purified understanding. The seat of understanding has to be totally baptized by the divine effulgence before you can even approximate to understand that it alone exists. I am into it is it, and it alone exists. Before you experience that, a lot of work has to be done. Yes, the science of this day has been able to cover some distance when it makes an announcement, a declaration that the world, the universe, not the world, the universe is entangled. The universe is not only entangled, but it is a oneness. From entanglement to oneness is the journey which shall be accomplished, may not be into the laboratories of the mortal plane, but into the laboratory of the immortal, that is the consciousness. This transmutation will take its own course of time, but it has been happening since times unknown and shall continue to happen for the times unknown. More to come in the next class, as we have the class upon Shrimed Bhagavad Gita every second and last Sunday of the month, in Hindi at 7:30 a.m. and in English at 9 a.m. Till then, Om Hi Satya Hai, Om Hi Satya Hai, Om Hi Satya Hai.